They say blood is thicker than water. But what happens when the water's been poisoned, and no one dares name the hand that poured it? My name is Arthur. To my grandson, I was Papa. To my son, I was Dad. To her, the woman who smiled at dinner while sharpening knives in the kitchen, I became inconvenient. It started with little things. A chair pulled away at the table, my medicine accidentally misplaced. And then, the coffee. Always the coffee. Served with a smile that never touched her eyes. One morning, the maid whispered 3 words that changed everything. Don't drink it. I didn't, but I let her keep pouring. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing an old man can do is pretend to be harmless. Now, there's a hospital bed, a shattered family, and a confession no one saw coming. But the real question isn't what she did. It's why she thought she could get away with it, and how one silent swap, one single, deliberate choice, turned the hunter into the hunted. I won't tell you how it ends. Not yet, but if you've ever trusted someone who smiled while plotting your erasure, you'll want to stay for this. Drop a word below. I'm watching. Let me know you're here, because this story, it's not just mine, it's for everyone who's been made to feel like a ghost in their own home. New here? Subscribe and hit the bell. We don't just tell stories, we uncover truths people hoped would stay buried. Now, let's dive into it. I need to tell you what happened before they twist it into something else. Before Clara's tears convince everyone I'm just a confused, bitter old man. I'm 71. I bought this land, poured the foundation, and raised every wall of this house with my own 2 hands back in '88. I raised my son, David, in these rooms, chasing him down this very hallway. I held my wife, Eleanor, in my arms in our bedroom as she took her last breath 2 years ago. The cancer was swift and cruel, and now I am disappearing, not dying. That would be a mercy. This is a slow, deliberate erasure, a vanishing act performed while I'm still breathing the air in the home I built. It started so subtly I thought it was grief, or age playing tricks on me. Clara, my daughter-in-law of 7 years, began to let silence fill the spaces where her words used to be. The cheerful, "Good morning, Arthur," became a non-committal hum. Her eyes, which once met mine with warmth, now skated over my shoulder, through me, as if I were made of glass. "Clara, is everything all right? Have I upset you?" She'd offer a smile, a tight, thin-lipped expression that held no light. "Of course not, Arthur. Don't be silly." Arthur. Not Papa, not Dad, just Arthur. A name for a stranger living in her house. David didn't see it. He's an architect, lost in blueprints and deadlines, out the door before dawn and home long after dinner is cold. The kids, little Leo, 7, and sweet Maya, 4, they still saw me. Their small hands would slip into mine, asking for a story or to see the robin's nest in the oak tree I planted the year David was born. But the atmosphere in the house had curdled. The air grew thick, every breath a conscious effort. And then there was the coffee. It began to taste bitter, metallic. I'd pour half of it down the sink when Clara wasn't looking, blaming my aging taste buds or a dirty machine. I even bought a new coffee maker, a fancy one, hoping that was it. It wasn't. I started feeling weaker, a little dizzy sometimes. I blamed the grief, the sleepless nights missing Eleanor, until the day Maria, our housekeeper of 10 years, grabbed my wrist as I raised the mug to my lips. Her grip was firm, her eyes wide with a fear I couldn't place. "Mr. Arthur," she whispered, her voice hushed and urgent. "No lo beba. Don't drink it." Maria is a woman of few words and immense pride. She's been tending to this house, to this family, with a quiet, steadfast loyalty. She's never interfered, never gossiped, until that Thursday. She pulled me into the pantry, the scent of dried herbs and clean linen filling the small space. Her hands, usually so steady as she polished silver, were trembling. I do not know how to say this," she began, her accent thickening with emotion. "Say what, Maria? What's wrong?" "The coffee. Su café. You must stop drinking it. Por favor." My heart, an old and tired drum, began to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Why? What are you talking about?" I saw her. Her voice dropped so low I had to lean in to hear. 2 days ago. It was early. I came in through the side door. I thought no one was awake. I saw her. At your mug. She had a small bottle, a brown one. She put drops into it. When she heard my footsteps, she hid it in her robe pocket so fast. The floor beneath me seemed to sway. The neatly organized cans of tomatoes and beans blurred. "You're sure?" I managed to choke out. "I thought perhaps it was vitamins. Something for your health." She shook her head, a tear escaping down her weathered cheek. "But then, yesterday, I was vacuuming the upstairs hall. The door to the study was not closed all the way. I heard her on the phone. She did not know I was there." "What did she say?" The question was a ghost of a sound. Maria's eyes met mine, filled with a terrible pity. She said, "He's more stubborn than I thought, but he's fading. It won't be much longer now." The air left my lungs. I braced myself against a shelf, the world narrowing to her horrified face and those damning words. "He's fading." "Does David know?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Mr. David. He is a good man, but he does not see. He is at work. He trusts her." She placed a comforting hand on my arm. "You must be careful, Mr. Arthur. You don't understand the weight of silence until you're listening for the sound of your own murder." Every creak of the floorboard upstairs was a footstep. Every clink of a dish was a vial being opened. The house, once my sanctuary, had become an echo chamber of hidden threats. I perfected the art of the pantomime. I would lift the tainted mug to my lips, pretending to sip, the ceramic rim never touching my skin. I'd nod and give a non-committal as if savoring the flavor. When her back was turned, I'd dump it into the large potted fern by the window, praying I wasn't killing the one thing in the house still thriving. She watched me watching her. "You're not finishing your coffee, Arthur," she'd say, her voice smooth as silk. "Is it not to your liking any more?" "Just cutting back, dear. Doctor's orders." The lie came easily. Her smile was a razor blade. "At your age, you need to keep your strength up. You've been looking so tired lately." The audacity of it stole my breath. This woman, who I'd welcomed into my family, who I'd held when her own mother passed, who had promised Eleanor she would look after me, was methodically, patiently, trying to kill me. But why? I became a ghost in my own home, searching for a motive. I sifted through mail, listened at closed doors, checked the bank book David sometimes left on his desk. Nothing was amiss. David's business was successful. They had savings. This house was paid for. I'd signed it over to them last year, a gift to ensure their future, to unburden them of any worry after I was gone. A decision that now tasted more bitter than the coffee ever had. They had everything. Everything except my absence. Then I overheard her. She was in the sunroom, her voice a low, pleased murmur. "Yes, Daddy's visiting next week. This needs to be wrapped up before he gets here. I can't have him seeing Arthur in this state. He'll ask questions." Her father. Robert. A cold dread, sharper than any I'd felt before, trickled down my spine. Robert was a man used to getting what he wanted. What was his role in this? That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out the old photo albums, the heavy leather-bound ones. There she was, Clara on her wedding day, laughing as she danced with me, calling me Papa. Clara, her face puffy with morning sickness, holding Eleanor's hand and confessing her fears about motherhood. Clara at the funeral, her arm linked tightly through mine, her tears genuine. "What would I do without you, Papa?" she had said. When did that woman become the one who measured my life in drops from a brown bottle? David found me in the kitchen late that night, staring into the dark abyss of my cold, untouched mug. "Dad, you all right? You've been quiet lately." "Just tired, son. Just tired." He clapped me on the shoulder, his hand warm and familiar. My boy. My good, decent, oblivious boy. He had no idea that the woman he slept beside every night was plotting to make him an orphan. The confrontation with David left me rattled. His concern was a mirror reflecting the image Clara had crafted for him. A fading, confused old man. I retreated to the one place that still felt like mine, the workshop in the garage. The scent of sawdust and linseed oil was a balm, the ghost of 1,000 projects past clinging to the tools hanging neatly on the wall. Eleanor's gardening bench, dusty but untouched, stood in the corner. I found myself drawn to a small, locked chest. Inside were not tools, but memories. The photo album on top was filled with pictures of Clara. Here she was, a vibrant young woman with a laugh that could light up a room, her arm slung around a shy-looking David. Here she was, heavily pregnant with Leo, beaming as Eleanor presented her with a hand-knitted blanket. The most painful was a photo from Eleanor's final birthday. Clara was feeding her a piece of cake, her touch impossibly gentle, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You're my family now," Eleanor had whispered to her that day, and Clara had clung to her hand as if it were a lifeline. When did that daughter become my executioner? I dug deeper past our family photos and found the ones from the wedding. And there he was, Robert, Clara's father, a large man, even in a photograph, with a grip that looked like it could crush rock and a smile that didn't quite reach his cold, assessing eyes. He was a self-made real estate titan from Chicago, and his visits had always been brief, transactional affairs. He'd shown up for the wedding and for Leo's christening, both times holding court in my living room, talking of portfolios, development deals, and legacy. "Clara's my only heir," he'd told me once, sipping my brandy. "Everything I've built will be hers. I expect her to manage it wisely." At the time, I'd heard a father's pride. Now, I heard a king instructing his princess, and I wondered what happened to those who were deemed unwise, to those who were in the way of a clearer succession. The pieces were there, but the picture they formed was too monstrous to accept. Was it just the house? This property, with its large, mature lot, was valuable. But was it worth a life? Or was it something more? A desire to have David, and more importantly, Clara's children, completely untethered from his past, from me? To have their world revolve solely around her and her father's empire? The following evening, David worked late again. I sat in the living room, pretending to read, while Clara bustled about, cleaning with an unusual vigor. She stopped in front of the mantelpiece where a silver-framed photo of Eleanor and me held a place of honor. She picked it up, dusted the frame meticulously with her cloth, and then, with a glance over her shoulder to ensure she was alone, she turned the frame face down. It was a small, petty gesture, but it was a confession. She wasn't just removing me from the future, she was erasing me from the past. A cold fury settled in my gut, burning away the last of my doubt. This was war, and I was the only one who knew it. Robert arrived on a Friday, his presence announced by the throaty roar of a luxury sports car that looked absurd in our quiet, tree-lined driveway. He emerged, larger than I remembered, dressed in a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my first car. "Clara, girl," he boomed, sweeping her into a bear hug that lifted her off the ground. David shook his hand, a respectful smile on his face. "Robert, good to see you." "David, place looks good." His gaze swept over the house I'd built, and I saw the appraisal in his eyes, not of a home, but of an asset. Then his eyes landed on me. "Arthur, you're still standing." It wasn't a question, it was a statement of mild surprise. "Still here," I said, my voice even. "You're looking thin, a bit pale. You should take better care of yourself." Clara was at his side instantly, looping her arm through his. "Now, Daddy, don't fuss. Arthur's just at that age where he's a little more fragile. The performance was masterful. The doting daughter, the concerned father-in-law, they played their parts perfectly over a dinner of roasted chicken that Clara had fussed over for hours. The conversation was light, centered on Robert's business, the children's school, anything but the unspoken tension that thrummed in the air like a live wire. After dessert, Clara brought out the coffee service. 2 pots. "The regular's here, and I made decaf for you, Daddy. Your doctor's orders." "And for you, Arthur?" David asked. "I'm fine, son. My stomach's a bit sensitive tonight." Clara's smile tightened. "Nonsense. A little decaf won't hurt." She reached for a clean cup from the cabinet, not the one from my usual place. Was this a new tactic? A different poison? Or was she just maintaining appearances in front of her father? She poured from the decaf pot and set the cup before me. "There you go." Robert leaned back, patting his stomach. "So, Clara, you said on the phone you had the preliminary numbers. About the property?" David looked up, his fork pausing midair. "Property? What property?" Clara's laugh was a little too high, a little too fast. "Oh, just this old house, honey. Daddy was helping me get a rough idea of its value. For our long-term financial planning, you know? For the kids' college funds." David looked puzzled but nodded slowly. "Right, sure." But I saw it. The swift, sharp glance that passed between father and daughter. A look of complicity, of shared secrets. This wasn't about college funds. This was about an appraisal. This was about a timeline. My timeline. I took the coffee cup Clara had given me. I made a show of lifting it, of blowing on the steam. I did not let a single drop pass my lips. When Robert launched into a story about a corporate takeover, I used the distraction to subtly swap my full cup with his empty one. He, distracted, absently picked it up and took a sip without noticing. The act felt both trivial and monumental. Later, I lay in bed, the house silent around me. But my mind was anything but quiet. The image of Robert's appraising gaze, Clara's possessive touch on the house's doorframe, the turned-down photograph, it all swirled into a maelstrom of certainty. I had to know. I had to hear it. I didn't have to wait long. The soft murmur of voices drifted up from the study directly below my room. I slipped out of bed, my heart hammering against my ribs, and lay flat on the floor, my ear pressed to the cold wooden boards. Their voices, though muffled, were clear enough. "Is taking too long." Robert's voice, impatient, gruff. "The offer won't sit on the table forever." "I know, Daddy, but he's stubborn, and he stopped drinking the coffee. I think he's suspicious." "Then be more creative. For God's sake, Lucy, I taught you better than this. That consortium wants to break ground in the spring. This whole cul-de-sac, raised for their luxury condos. We're talking 9 million, minimum. Maybe 10. 10 million. The number hung in the air, a grotesque price tag on my life. But David... Clara's voice was a whine now. "David will be fine. He'll be grieving. You'll be the strong one. You sell this place, you buy something modern, no memories, no ghosts. He'll be so grateful you're holding him together he won't question a thing. The man is oblivious." A long silence. I could picture her twisting her hands, a habit she had when nervous. What if we can't?" she whispered. "We can. You will." His voice dropped, becoming deadly serious. "It's not just about the money, Clara. It's about control. It's about your future, unencumbered. No ties to this simple life. Your children deserve the legacy I built, not this sentimental shack. Now, are you with me?" A beat. Then her voice, small but resolved. "Yes, Daddy." I lay on the floor, the wood grain pressing a pattern into my cheek. The last vestige of hope, the foolish notion that this was some terrible misunderstanding, evaporated. I felt a strange calm settle over me. The hunting was over. They had a plan, but so did I. If they wanted me gone, I would go. But I would not go quietly into the night they had planned for me. I would leave, but I would take their entire scheme down with me, and I would use their own weapon to do it. The line has been drawn. Are you on my side? Prove it. Subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss the moment her perfect plan shatters. I woke before dawn, the sky a deep, bruised purple outside my window. I dressed slowly, methodically. This was the day. I could feel it in my bones, in the unnatural quiet of the house. Robert was leaving after breakfast. It was now or never. I sat at the kitchen table in the pre-dawn gloom and waited. At 6:15 a.m., Clara descended. She was already dressed, her hair perfect. She didn't seem surprised to see me. "You're up early," she said, her voice neutral. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. "Big day. Robert heading out?" "Yes, his flight's at noon." She moved to the coffee maker, her routine as practiced as a ballet. Grind the beans, brew the pot, set out the cups. My usual mug, the one with the chip on the handle, was placed squarely at my spot. Then the performance began. She glanced toward the doorway, ensuring it was empty. From the pocket of her tailored slacks she produced it, the small brown glass bottle. Her hands were steady as she unscrewed the dropper top. She leaned over my mug, and with 2 precise squeezes, clear liquid fell into the dark brew. She stirred it once, twice with a small spoon, wiping it clean on a cloth afterward. She turned, catching my eye. For a fleeting second I saw not the monster, but the woman from the photographs, and a jolt of sorrow, profound and devastating, shot through me. What had broken in her to bring us here? "Here's your coffee, Arthur," she said, placing the poisoned chalice before me. "Fresh, just the way you like it." "Thank you, Clara," I said, my voice remarkably steady. She sat down across from me, folding her hands in her lap. Waiting. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. The heat was a lie. "You know," I began, my tone conversational, "I was thinking about Eleanor last night." Her posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "She loved you so much," I continued. "She thought you were the best thing that ever happened to David, to this family." Her jaw tightened. "We all miss her." "Do we?" I asked softly, looking directly into her eyes. She looked away, toward the staircase. Footsteps. Heavy, confident. Robert. "Hope that coffee's strong," he bellowed as he entered the kitchen, filling the space with his oppressive energy. "Need to be sharp for the drive." Clara stood, a flutter of motion. "Daddy, let me get you a fresh." "It's all right," I said, cutting her off. I stood slowly, my joints protesting. I picked up the mug she had prepared for me, the one that held my death. I felt its weight, a terrible gravity. I walked the few steps to Robert and held it out to him. "Take mine. It's fresh. I haven't touched it." I placed it squarely in his hands. Clara's face went sheet white. Her eyes widened in pure, undiluted horror. "Daddy, no, wait." But it was too late. Robert, already distracted by his phone, grunted a thanks and took a long, deep swallow. For a moment, nothing happened. Robert smacked his lips, nodding in approval. "Strong. Good. You finally got the blend right, Clara girl." Clara stood frozen, a statue of terror, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the counter. Her eyes were locked on her father, then darted to me. In that glance I saw the entire horrifying calculation, the realization, the panic, the dawning understanding that her weapon had been turned against its maker. I simply stood my ground, a silent sentinel. Robert took another, smaller sip, then set the mug down on the table with a definitive clink. "All right, better hit the road. Beat the traffic." He took 2 steps toward the hallway where his suitcase stood. Then he stopped. A strange, confused expression crossed his face, as if he'd forgotten something. His hand came up to his temple. "Daddy?" Clara's voice was a strangled whisper. He didn't answer. His knees buckled, not in a slow crumple, but as if the strings holding him up had been severed. He fell like a great oak, his head connecting with the hardwood floor with a sickening, final thud. The house seemed to shake with the impact. The mug, perched on the edge of the table, wobbled and then fell, shattering on the floor, scattering ceramic shards and the dregs of the poisoned coffee. Robert's body began to seize, a violent, unnatural shuddering. His face turned a mottled, grayish purple, his lips a terrifying shade of blue. A guttural, choking sound escaped his throat and his eyes were wide, bulging with a primal, uncomprehending terror. Clara's scream was not one of grief, but of sheer, panicked horror. "Daddy!" She scrambled to him, sliding on her knees through the spilled coffee, cradling his head. "Daddy, breathe! Look at me! Breathe!" David came thundering down the stairs, his hair disheveled, his face a mask of sleep and confusion. "What happened? What was that noise?" "Call 911, Clara shrieked, her voice cracking. "It's Dad. I think it's his heart." David fumbled for his phone, his hands trembling so badly he nearly dropped it. He stammered our address to the dispatcher, his eyes wide as he took in the scene. His wife sobbing over her convulsing father, the broken china, the dark stain spreading on the floor. The paramedics arrived with a blare of sirens that shattered the morning quiet. They worked with efficient, grim urgency, loading Robert onto a gurney, attaching leads, barking medical jargon. One of them, a young woman with a sharp gaze, paused by the broken mug. She sniffed the air, then the wet patch on the floor. "What did he ingest?" she asked, her eyes scanning the three of us. "Just coffee," Clara cried, her face buried in David's chest. "He just had his morning coffee." The paramedic's eyes narrowed slightly. She looked from the shattered pieces to the coffee pot, to the other clean cups on the table. Then her gaze landed on me, and Clara saw her looking. The transformation was instantaneous. The hysterical daughter vanished, replaced by a cornered animal lashing out. Her finger, sharp and accusing, shot out toward me. It was him. Her voice was a venomous shriek, raw with a performance of rage. "He gave Daddy that cup. He handed it to him. He gave it to him." David stared at me, his face a canvas of confusion and dawning horror. "Dad? What is she talking about?" "He's been losing it," Clara screamed, tears now streaming down her face, a perfect imitation of betrayed grief. "For weeks. The paranoia, the accusations. He's not in his right mind. He must have put something in it. He tried to poison my father. You saw what she did. But the police haven't yet. Subscribe now, because the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone thinks is harmless." The paramedics looked at me, their professional neutrality now tinged with suspicion. And I, standing calmly amidst the chaos, looked directly at my son. My voice was quiet, but it cut through Clara's hysterics with the clarity of a bell. "That was my cup," I said, "the one she poured for me. He asked for coffee. I gave him mine." The hospital waiting room was a sterile, silent purgatory. David paced, a caged tiger wearing a path in the linoleum. Clara sat rigidly in a plastic chair, shredding a tissue in her lap, her sobs having subsided into silent, furious tears she would direct at me every few minutes. I sat, still and calm, my hands folded in my lap. The police arrived. 2 officers, one older with a weary face, one young and keen. They separated us. Clara was taken to a private family room, David to another. I remained where I was. I told the older officer, a Sergeant Miller, everything. I started from the beginning. The changing taste of the coffee, the weakness, Maria's warning, the brown bottle, the overheard conversations about timelines and property value, the final damning exchange between father and daughter about the $10 million consortium. "He's lying," Clara's voice echoed from down the hall. "He's a sick, delusional old man. My father is dying and he's telling stories." Sergeant Miller listened, his expression unreadable. He sent the younger officer to our house with my key. "Check the study," I told him. "A small brown glass bottle with a dropper. It will be in the desk drawer, tucked behind the hanging files." Time stretched and warped. David was brought back, his face ashen. He looked at me, then at Clara, his world visibly fracturing. The young officer returned. He held up a small evidence bag. Inside was the brown bottle. "What is this, Mrs. Sterling?" Sergeant Miller asked Clara. Her face was a mask of outraged innocence. "I have no idea. I've never seen that before in my life. He planted it. He's framing me." "It will have your fingerprints on it, ma'am. We'll test the contents." "Then he wore gloves. He's thought of everything. He's been planning this." "Test my cup," I said, my voice still calm. "The one I was supposed to drink from. It should be on the counter, unwashed." They had. The lab results, rushed due to the critical nature of the incident, came back sooner than anyone expected. The contents of the bottle and the residue in my cup were a match, a concentrated mixture of ethylene glycol, antifreeze, and a sedative to mask the initial symptoms. When Sergeant Miller presented this to Clara, her carefully constructed facade finally shattered. It didn't break with a bang, but with a slow, crumbling collapse. The anger drained from her face, leaving behind a pale, terrified woman. "I didn't mean," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It wasn't supposed to be Daddy." David made a sound like a wounded animal. "What are you saying, Clara?" She turned to him, her eyes pleading, grabbing for his hands. "It was for us, David, all of it. The developer, the money. We could finally have the life we deserve. We could be free." "Free from what?" David roared, yanking his hands away as if her touch burned. The other waiting families stared. "Free from my father?" And in that moment, stripped of all her lies and manipulations, she gave him the truth. It was small, simple, and utterly monstrous. Her shoulders slumped. She looked at the floor, her voice flat and empty. He was in the way. Those 4 words hung in the antiseptic air. David stared at her, and I watched as the love in his eyes was extinguished, replaced by a hollow, devastating comprehension. The handcuffs that the younger officer clicked around Clara's wrists seemed almost an afterthought. She didn't look at any of us as they led her away. Robert survived. He spent 3 weeks in the ICU, his kidneys nearly failing, his body ravaged by the poison meant for me. When he was finally lucid, the police told him everything. His own daughter, using his own ruthless philosophy, had accidentally very nearly been his murderer. He never called me. He never apologized. A lawyer contacted me a month after he was discharged. Robert was transferring the deed of a commercial property he owned, a small but valuable strip mall, into my name. A trust for Leo and Maya had also been established, irrevocable and beyond even Clara's reach. It wasn't an apology. It was a settlement, a final financial balancing of the books. He died 6 months later. The official cause was complications from the poisoning. The unofficial cause, I believe, was the realization that the monster he had raised had finally turned on him. Clara's trial was swift. She took a plea bargain, attempted manslaughter and aggravated assault, to avoid a murder charge, as Robert's death was technically separate. She got 15 years. David filed for divorce from her before the sentencing. The hardest part was the children. David, in his profound, grieving wisdom, did not tell them the full truth. He said Mommy had made a very big mistake, a dangerous one, and she had to go away for a long time to learn how to be better. They are in therapy. We all are. Maria still comes to clean twice a week. She sometimes weeps when she thinks I don't see her. "I should have spoken sooner, Mr. Arthur," she'll say. "You spoke in time," I always tell her. "You are the reason I am here to thank you." I still live in the house I built. The silence is different now. It's no longer heavy with threat, but filled with the gentle, aching absence of Eleanor and the ghost of the family we almost lost. I make my own coffee every morning. The first sip is always an act of reclamation. David and the children moved back in last month. He said the rental felt like a waiting room, and this, for all its painful memories, is the only place that has ever felt like home. Some nights I hear him crying in his old room. I don't go in. Some griefs a man must bear alone. Leo asked me last Sunday why I look at my coffee cup for so long before I drink. I told him I was just watching the steam rise, remembering how his grandmother loved the smell of coffee in the morning. It was part of the truth. The other part is that every morning I choose to drink from a cup that holds no fear. I choose to sit in the sun that streams through the window I installed. I choose to listen to the sounds of my grandson laughing in the yard I landscaped. My hands are in the earth again, tending to Eleanor's rose bushes. They are coming back, stronger than before. The house is quiet, but it is no longer silent. It is filled with the fragile, resilient sounds of a family learning to live again. We are scarred. We are forever changed. But we are here. And some days, after everything, that is not just a victory. It is a miracle. This story is over, but the fight for other silent voices continues. Your support gives them a platform. Subscribe for more stories that uncover the truths people hoped would stay buried.